the trick to finding surface area in any problem. The first thing we need to do is identify our height. And if it's a rectangular prism, it doesn't really matter which face that you pick. Pick one of those three numbers and count it as your height. What do you see as your height, Marquisha? What do you see? You see 5 as the height. I'm going to identify that as my height. Everybody with me that far? It would not have mattered if I'd used 3 or if I'd used 7. Would have made no difference in this problem because it's rectangular. The surface area is equal to pH plus 2b. Remember that this P and B come from the shape of the base. If this is the height, then this is the base. And we're going to separate out that base shape because P and B are going to come from that.
So the base is 7?
No, the base is what? This rectangle. P stands for the perimeter of this rectangle. This capital B stands for the area of this rectangle. If I identify the height, I separate out whatever shape that base is. Sometimes it'll be a rectangle. Sometimes it'll be a triangle. Sometimes it may be some kind of complex shape. P and B will come from whatever that base shape is. Perimeter is the distance around the outside. If this is a rectangle, if this was 7 on the bottom, it's 7 on the top. If it's 3 on the left, it's 3 on the... And I would find the perimeter by adding these all together. 7 plus 3. 10. Plus 10 more is? My perimeter is 20, going all the way around the outside. How do I find the area of a rectangle? Base times height, or length times width, right? 3 times 7, or 21. Once I have these 3 things, that's all I need to calculate the surface area. All I have to do left is plug them into the formula. S equals, what do I put in place of P? 20. What do I put in place of H? 5.
Wait, how did you get, oh yeah.
Plus 2 times, what do I put in place of B? 21. 20 times 5, 100. 2 times 21, 100 plus 42. We're talking about surface area. It was in inches. Since it's area, it's inches squared. And I'm going to tell you, every single problem except 5 and 6, which had a trick to it, could have been done in the same exact fashion. Identify the height. Draw the base out separate. That's where your perimeter and your area are going to come from on that base shape. Then you plug those numbers into the formula. Really good on the first problem. Understand how I did it. Should? Did you take any notes? No. Take any notes? No. Take any notes? No. Anything? Did you write it down? I'm going to tell you, if you're not taking the time to write it down, my opinion, you're not learning it. You're not going to get it. You're going to go home and you're going to come back and tell me the same thing tomorrow. I didn't understand it. The nice thing about the sections that we're in is they're driven by this formula. It tells you the things we have to find. I have to find the perimeter of the base. I have to find the height of the object. I have to find the area of the base. And if I know that those are the things that I'm looking for, I can focus on those things and I can plug them into a formula. Does everybody agree that we can find perimeter and area of a rectangle?
Yes.
That this isn't hard? You've been doing it for a long, long time? And that's the hardest part about this, is pulling this piece out. Okay? Next problem. Same type problem. It's a rectangular prism. Surface area is equal to pH plus 2b. The first thing I want to identify in this is what I want to use as my height. Summer, what would you pick? The 5. By the way, again, because it's rectangular, it doesn't matter. You'll see in the next problems it makes a difference, but in a rectangular prism, it doesn't matter what you identify. It just matters then that if this is the height, then this piece right here is the base. And we're going to draw that out separate. The width of this base was 3. The length of this base was 10. And the perimeter of the base is P. And the area of the base is B. And we find the perimeter, the distance around the outside of the rectangle. If this is 10 on the bottom, how big is it on the top?
10.
If it's 3 on the left, it's 3 on the right. If I add them up going all the way around the outside, it is 26. How do I find the area of a rectangle? Length times
3 times 10.
width. 3 times 10. 30.
So plug it back in.
Once I have these 3 things, all that's left is what, Hanley?
Plug it back into the surface area.
Plug it back into the formula. S equals 26 times 5 plus 2 times 30. 26 times 5, 130. 2 times 30, 60. Add the 2 together. 190.
Oh.
It's in centimeters, so my answer is in centimeters squared. Every single surface area problem that's dealing with a prism is done the same way. The formula tells us what we need to know. We identify the height. We separate out and we find the perimeter and the area of that base shape, whatever it is. Then we plug numbers into a formula. The hard part's right here. The hard part's in this base, because that's where the main calculations are. Everybody with me with the second problem?
They should have
They should have what?
cause I put the answers on the bottom.
Yeah.
It's confusing.
Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to talk about number 3. And I want to talk about the concept of height, because the concept of height is confusing to some people. John, how tall are you? Okay, if you're standing up, you're 5'11". If you're laying down, you're how tall? 5'11". Height is not the distance from the floor to the top. It's the distance between a top and a bottom. In a prism, it's the distance between the two shapes that are identical to each other and parallel to each other. The two that are identical and parallel are these two triangles. What's the height?
17.
What's the height?
24.
The height is 24. It's not the distance from what looks like the bottom of the prism to the top. It's the distance between the top and the bottom faces. The two pieces that are parallel and congruent. Absolutely. If I'm looking even at a cylinder, okay? The height of the cylinder is the distance between the two circles. If I lay the cylinder on the side, does it change the height of the cylinder? No, it's still the distance between what? The two circles. That's what you're seeing here, except instead of being a circle, it's a triangle. I have to identify the height. Once I've identified the height, this is the base. And what am I going to do with that base shape? I'm going to separate it out. Because I'm going to find P and B from this triangular shape. Now, you look, they gave me 17. They gave me 17 here. They gave me 10 here. We're going to talk about a problem with the words, the numbers that they gave us in a minute. But it's irrelevant. I can use the numbers that they have. But there was definitely a mistake in the way they drew it. How would I find the perimeter? Add all the sides together. So it would be 10 plus 17 plus 17. It would not include 18 because it's on the inside, not the outside. 17 and 17, 34 plus 10, 44. Everybody with me on how I found the perimeter of my triangle?
Yes.
Questions so far? How do I find the area of a triangle? Base times height divided by 2. Understand that this base and this height is the base and the height of the triangle. It has nothing to do with the height that was over here in the prism. I've already set that aside. Okay. What's the base of the triangle? 10. What's the height of the triangle? 18. 10 times 18 divided by 2 90.
Is what?
90.
No.
Notice, what do I have? I have the height, I have the perimeter, and I have the base. All I have left to do is plug them back into a formula. S equals 44 times 24 plus 2 times 90. Somebody's got to do this first number for me because that one I'm not doing in my head. 44 times 24.
1,056.
1,056. And I'm going to add 180 to it. 1,236 centimeters squared.
What is it?
1,236 centimeters squared. Again, the same process. I write down the formula. I identified the height. I separated out the base. I found the perimeter of the base and the base area, and I plugged them back into the formula. You're going to use the same process, no matter how complicated they're trying to make it look. Okay? Everybody okay? Understand what I've done? Let's take a look at number 4 now. Damien, can you tell me what the formula is for surface area?
S equals pH plus 2B.
Very good. S equals pH plus 2B. What is the first thing I want to identify in my shape? The what? Height. This is where you have to be careful because of a misconception of what height is. People will think of it as from the floor to the ceiling, but it's between the two congruent parallel faces. What is the height? The height is 10. Listen, it's a rectangle on the top here, but it's a different rectangle on the bottom. It's a rectangle here, it's a rectangle over here. The base is this, because there's another one just like it
On the other side.
that's back here that you can't see. Okay? Everybody understand that? That's probably the most confusing part for people, is to understand that height isn't from what looks like it's the bottom to the top. It is the distance between those two exact same shapes that are parallel to each other. Once I've identified that height, I am going to separate out that base shape. I'm going to redraw that picture that was there on my base. Okay? Because what's going to come from this? My perimeter and my area of my base. Now I do have to put my numbers back in. They told me that this was 20. They told me that this piece was 36. They told me this length was 30. A piece of this was 24, and this was 36. Everybody with me? How would I find the perimeter? Add it all the way around the outside. 20 plus 36 plus 30 plus 24 plus 36.
Is that the base?
That is the perimeter of this base shape. The distance all the way around what? The outside of it. And what did it come up to, Damien? 146? Now, there's two different ways that I could calculate the base area. I could treat it as a rectangle.
Oh, is that 30 or 20 on the side?
Here, this is 30, this one's 20. I could treat it as a rectangle and a triangle being added together. I could treat the whole thing as a trapezoid. Either way is going to be okay. I have found that most students have a hard time with the trapezoid formula. They do much better with rectangles and triangles. So we're going to add the two pieces together. How do I find the area of a rectangle? Length times width. 20 times 36. 720. How do I find the area of a triangle? Base times height divided by 2. The base of the triangle is 24. The height of the triangle is 20 divided by 2. So the base area is 720 plus 240, or 960. What's left?
Plug it back in.
All we have to do is put them back in. What was P? 146. What was H? 10. Plus 2 times 960. 146 times 10, 1,460. 2 times 960, 1920. And then add the two pieces together, which is going to be 3380. And it was in feet, so this would be feet what? Squared. Right with me? Understand what I've done? I want to talk about why 5 and 6 were a little different. Here they put two things, what? Together. If this came out as far as this did, it wouldn't be a problem, but they have different sizes, don't they? When I'm calculating surface area, if I was trying to do the surface area, and this is basically what you have a rectangular prism on the bottom, and you have a smaller rectangular prism on the top. If I calculate the surface area of this whole prism, and I calculate the surface area of this whole prism, and I add them together, would it give me the surface area of this whole thing, or would it be too big? Can you tell me why? It is too big. Can you tell me why?
Because this right here is not the whole thing and the other bottom.
Listen, I've got to take two of these away. Two of these are now where? On the inside, not on the surface. That's the trick to this. And then on top of it, if you are not paying attention, what didn't she do? She didn't paint the bottom. So, if I were setting up a way to do this, I'd calculate the surface area of the large cube. I'd add to it the surface area of the small cube. Okay? I'm going to calculate the surface area, S, of the large cube. I'm going to add to it the surface area of the small cube. Up here, what am I going to have to subtract? 2 of the small squares. But I also got to remember, what didn't she paint?
The bottom.
She didn't paint the bottom. So I've got to subtract a large square. That's what happens when your tongue gets in front of your eye teeth. You can't see what you're saying. If your tongue gets in front of your eye teeth, you can't see what you're saying.
Yo, like actual teeth?
These are called eye teeth. If your tongue gets in front of them, you can't see what you're saying. It's a joke. Okay. I'm less worried about this one because tonight's homework, you're not going to have a problem like this. Okay? But this is how you would calculate it. You'd find the surface area of the large cube. You'd find the surface area of the small cube. You'd add them together. You'd remember that 2 of these squares, 2 of them, would not be on the outside. They'd be stuck on the inside. So you have to take them back out. And then they said they weren't going to paint the bottom, so I have to remember that I've got to subtract that bottom out of that figure as well. Okay? Nothing that confusing tonight. Are you okay? Better than what we were yesterday? Yes?
Yes.
Excellent, please. Quick, go. We're going to talk about the same thing. Don't panic. It's going to be homework. We're going to talk about it. Just a second. Just hang on.
Is the height 5 feet?
Please notice, this problem is one of those problems on that sheet. It's figure number 2. Everybody see it? There is not room to work it out on the sheet. There just isn't. Don't try to work it out there. Set it up and work it out the way I'm showing you how to work them out. Don't try some other method. Please, this is one of those times where I'm telling you, if you'll stick to the way I'm teaching you, you're going to be successful. If you try to go off on your own and do it some other way, you're probably going to flounder some. When the book shows you a problem like this, you know how they really would like you to calculate it? They'd like to calculate this rectangular prism here, this cubed prism here, this triangular prism here, and remember to subtract out all the pieces that were stuck where? On the inside. That's how the book would like you to do it. I want you to learn a better way. So long as there are two congruent parallel faces, we can do it the same way we've been doing everything else that we've done. As a class, what's the formula? S equals what?
pH plus 2B.
pH plus 2B. What is the first thing I'm going to identify?
Height.
And Haley, can you tell me what it is? This is the tricky part. It is not 7.
No,
It's what?
not 7. I didn't say 7.
Oh, what did you say?
I didn't know. Because there's 2 of the same one.
If you look, there's this kind of odd shape here. And that exact shape is in the back behind it. Those are the two congruent parallel pieces. The height is how big?
5.
5. And we're going to separate out that other shape. And we're going to label it with all the pieces they gave me. The bottom of this shape was how big? 17. The left side of this shape was how big? 10. The top piece that's not slanted is 5. The slanted piece was, and the piece that's on the right is 5. And I'm actually going to put some of these little pieces that they've got in here. From this shape, what am I going to find? The perimeter of the base and the area of the base. Area of the base can be trickier, but the perimeter is just what? Adding all the numbers on the outside. 17 plus 10 plus 5 plus 13 plus 5. All the way around the outside. It's 50, isn't it? Okay. When I go to calculate the area of this base, the shape that's over here, this one shape that's over here, it's not a rectangle, it's not a triangle, it's not a trapezoid, so I've got to break it into pieces. Okay? I've got a rectangle on the bottom. Length times width. How would I find the area of this rectangle that's on the bottom? What would I do? What would I do, Josh? 5 times 17. Which is how much? 85. I would find this area. Be careful when I go to find this one. If this is 5 here and the whole thing was 10, this is 5, 5, 5. So this has an area of 25. How would I find the area of this triangle now that's left? What's the height? 5. What's the distance across the base?
13.
It is 17 minus 5, which is 12. Okay? So I'd do 12 times 5 divided by 2, or 30. What am I going to do with those pieces to find my area of my base? Add them together. 25 plus 30 plus 85.
140.
140. Do I have everything I need to calculate my surface area?
25 plus 30.
25 from the square, 30 from the triangle, and 85 from the rectangle that was on the bottom. I add all of those together and it gives me the area of the whole shape put together. Are you with me? If this whole distance going this way is 17, when I use 5 of it up here, how much is left here? I got to take 17 minus that 5 that I've already used up, which is where the 12 came from. Are you okay? What's left? Plug it into the formula. What do I put in place of P?
50.
50. What do I put in place of H? 5. What do I put in place of B?
140.
140. 5 times 50.
25 plus.
25 with 0 on it, right?
Yeah, 250
Plus
plus
280. 530. It's in feet, so it would be feet squared.
530.
Everybody okay? Understand how I've done it?
That's a lot of work.
Okay. How many questions are left on that sheet in front of you there?
6.
This was one of the 6, right? How many are left?
5.
There's 5 questions. That's your assignment. To do those 5 questions that are left on that worksheet. Okay? I'm going to tell you the easiest one to do is the triangular prism that's on the bottom. Because you won't have to separate anything else out. The other ones you're going to have to add pieces together to get this base area. But it's still all about identifying what? Identify that height and separating out the base. P and B both come from that base shape. Hmm? We're on our own now. Your job is to finish what? The worksheet. 5 questions. What's the height? Yes, you do. What's 2 shapes are exactly the same? This. It's in the front, it's in the back. What separates them? Okay, it is. But there's also a gap in between them then, isn't there? You see it? Can't do a gap. Got to be exactly the same with no what? No space in between it.